Hey everyone, my name is Jonathan Michael and welcome to AI for Wealth. With me today is Chris Heye. Chris is the founder of Wellcare Solutions and creator of Whealthchat.ai, which is a chatbot designed to improve financial decision making. It's built on top of a custom trained model that leverages multiple award-winning content designed by experts in financial planning, psychiatry, and healthcare. He helped design a clinical study at the Massachusetts General Hospital, which investigated the behavioral and cognitive underpinnings of sound financial decision making. He got his PhD from MIT and is a research fellow at the Alliance of Lifetime Income. Chris, I'm super excited about this conversation, so thanks for making time for the show.
Yeah, I'm excited too, Jonathan. Thanks for having me.
Yep, awesome. So, Chris, I want to get this off the bat. Just want to,
hmm
start off with this question. But why do you think this time is different? You've said it before in
Yeah,
your newsletters, and there's a lot of talk today about how, generative AI is not going to be as different from, say, the machine learning driven robos of the 2010s. Why do you think this time is different?
yeah. I think it's a huge question because it's funny because historically I've been the one who said it's not different. I've usually taken the contrary position. So because if you look back at the steam engine and the railroads and the internal combustion engine and electricity, there were almost always, even the internet, there were always people at that time saying, oh, it's going to kill all these jobs and we're going to go into recession and there's going to be, all these people unemployed. And of course, there are some specific industries and specific hits that these technologies affected. But in general, I mean, look at electricity. I'm sure electricity created a lot more jobs than it destroyed. And I'm sure the railroads
Hmm.
created a lot more jobs than it destroyed. And I think you could say the same thing about the internet. There are basically two, and so again, my initial gut reaction to anybody who says this time's different is, well, it's never been different before. So why is it different now? And but there are two reasons why I think it might be different now. Um, the probably the most important reason is if you look back at most of these major innovations, like whatever it is, the blast furnace, the internal combustion engine, even semiconductors, most of the labor most of the jobs that replaced were it was manual labor.
Hmm.
So if you look back, so we don't have the horse and buggy, we got rid of the horse and buggy guys, and we got rid of the Pony Express, and most of the labor that was replaced was sort of low to medium skill, but labor intensive, whereas or sort of manual labor intensive. Whereas AI has the ability to really impact the professions that require a lot of thinking and cognitive processing. So, AIs, might replace lawyers. It's probably going to replace a lot of, white collar workers, people in media and communications and marketing, even computer programmers and data scientists. I mean, there's a lot of those jobs that are vulnerable to AI and vulnerable to this new technology in a way that other previous technologies did not threaten them. So that's the first one. So again, it's the nature of the work that it's replacing. The second part is the speed. I mean, one thing you see if you look back on these major innovations historically, they might take decades. People talk about the railroads and electricity taking decades to really, to really fully be exploited. And even the computer revolution of the 1980s, there was that old joke is that, computers are being seen everywhere except in the productivity statistics. Um, but you did see this bump in sort of the mid to late 90s in productivity that a lot of people think the cause of that was what happened in the 80s.
Right.
But with these LLMs, the thing is that these LLMs, they not only just introduce new capacity, but this sort of ability for each iteration of model to train itself. That means you get into this iterative process that becomes quickly very nonlinear. So the idea is that these models are going to get better really fast in ways that electricity generation didn't get better that fast, or railroads didn't get better that fast. So the two things why it might be different is, again, it's the type of labor that AI can replace and the speed in which it has the potential to replace that labor.
Right. So from what I hear, like you share more of a replacement type worldview versus the co-pilot worldview is that AI can augment knowledge workers, help them to do a lot more than they were able to do before. But you think that, wait a minute, LLMs are actually super capable of doing 100%, 90%, 95% of what knowledge workers are able to do. That's what
In
I'm
some
inferring from what,
cases.
in some
Yeah,
cases. Right,
I don't want to say that. I certainly do. I mean, for me, AI has definitely been a co-pilot. It's made me much more
right.
productive. So I definitely think that we're already seeing that now. So
Yeah,
we're already seeing a lot of professions potential to have a much higher productivity. So what that means is it's still, in theory, if somebody gets more productive, let's say a financial advisor gets more productive. Well, what does that mean? So even if you believe the co-pilot view, which I partially believe in, if you believe in the co-pilot view, so okay, why are they adopting this to become more productive? Well, then if they become more productive, that means they can probably serve more clients. Like one
right,
advisor could serve more clients. So if the client base does not expand, this is kind of just like a logic problem. You're going to need fewer advisors
right,
because unless, and I think this is also possible, unless you can get more clients. So, but even to me, the co-pilot view implies directly or indirectly that you're going to need fewer advisors.
right. Because if you have swarms of agents that can run these
Yeah,
tasks for you on your behalf,
yeah,
then you're freed up to do more, acquire more clients. So that's the popular view, right? That's the view that
yeah,
that a lot of companies and advisors want to, work towards. And I think they're making
yes,
lots of progress towards that because, first
mm-hmm,
you had back office automation, right? You're having a lot of these note takers, marketing content,
mm-hmm,
all these different tools that, automate that back office, but then also in the middle office, right? Account opening,
sure,
client onboarding, right?
sure.
Um, like what are your thoughts on like using agents as like a full stack approach to like automating a lot of these advisor workflows? Like, is that why you believe in the premise that this time is different? Are agents like a core
That
piece to that? Yeah,
that's part of it because again, they can replace cognitive labor, right? So
right,
these really good agents can detect things that humans maybe can detect, but they'll be able to detect them a lot quicker. And they'll be able, and as these models get trained, they'll be able to make recommendations and provide, series of very personalized recommendations very quickly.
right,
And they may be identify, they may be faster at identifying problems and quicker
right,
at coming up with solutions than a typical financial professional. So I think these agents, I think that's kind of the future is to train these agents to be
right,
more proactive. Right now, a lot of the stuff is reactive, but I think everybody's moving, including my products. I'm trying to move in that direction, be able to say not just answer your question, but anticipate your question, give
hmm,
you, follow up. Like if you ask a certain question, then I can say, well, have you also thought about this? Have you thought about that? Because it seems like you're thinking about this. So it's because a lot of people don't know what they don't know, right? So what these agents got potential to do is say, hey, did you think about this? Did you think about that? Based on maybe it's based on your profile. And I've done a little bit of the work, this kind of work, and what I'm doing is they can look and say, hey, Jonathan, he's X years old, he's married, not married, he's got kids, whatever, he's got this amount of assets, he kind of looks like this persona, and this persona, these are the kind of you know purposes we tend to recommend to people like Jonathan. So just give me a little information about Jonathan, and I'll give you a whole bunch of ideas about how you can best meet his needs.
right. So that brings me to like this behavioral piece of financial planning, right? So we've talked a lot
Yeah,
about like the agentic use cases and like how agents can automate
yeah.
a lot of these rote tasks that a firm
Mm-hmm.
has on day to day. And you refer to planning firms of the future being perceived as medical practices or financial
Yeah,
therapists. What do you mean by that?
yeah. Yeah, so I think that, and I don't think I'm an outlier in this view. I think a lot of people feel like as AI starts to take over some of the basics, as we talked about, back office operations, marketing, and even investment portfolio management, again, that should free up the advisor's time, right? They should have more
Right.
time to directly engage with their client. And a lot of what clients need is not just this is sort of
Mm,
technical expertise, and we're seeing this more and more. They want sort of emotional and psychological support. A lot of what advisors are doing is helping their clients, get through a bear market or get through a major, family health event. And I think that trend's going to continue because again, the
yeah.
advisor is not going to have to. I mean, I think in a few years, I mean, this, investment portfolio management is going to take them like 10 minutes a day kind of thing. It's going to, oh, how's it looking? It's looking good. Okay. But Mr. Smith just called and his wife just had a heart attack. That's what I really need to focus on.
Mm,
So I think there's sort of two pieces of that. One is that it frees up time for that, and the other part that there is a tremendous demand, I think, and in the survey data that I see, and when you look at these surveys about what clients really want and what they're most afraid of, it's almost always these softer issues. Like what they want is like the number one answer is usually an advisor who gets me, advisor who understands me, who knows who I am, who knows, understands my values. That's almost the most important thing you see. And then, what do you most fear? They usually fear health events. They fear, long-term care. They fear cognitive decline. It's not like they fear those usually more than they fear, inflation or taxes. So I really feel like so one part of this medical practice is that they're going to act more like sort of counselors, therapists. And you see this already. You see
right.
firms hiring financial therapists. You see them hire, behavioral finance folks. I know a firm that's hired a nurse. I think I've heard about firms that hired like divorce counselors or marriage counselors.
Oh, wait a minute.
So I think
Sorry.
you're going to see more of that.
Why would a firm hire a nurse?
Because this firm does a lot of work with older clients, and part of what they're trying to do is help them not only afford long-term care, they're even helping a little bit with placement in assisted living facilities. So they're very much focused on understanding the health needs. And if you look at the numbers, long-term care can be really expensive. I mean, my mother was in long-term care. She had dementia. We were paying, $12,000 a month. It's probably more now. So for many older adults, these are massive expenditures.
Wow.
So to be able to help plan, and to some extent, the nurses can help lower the costs by putting together not just a good financial plan, but also a healthcare plan.
Right. So, what did you mean by, I did read one of your newsletters and you mentioned that AI is going to get better and better at seeming human and
Yeah,
creating human-like connections.
yeah,
And there's an article, well, this has actually happened a few months ago, but ChatGPT 4.5 passed the Turing test. And here we are
right,
sitting in September,
right.
like as though nothing happened. But that's quite a big
Yeah,
deal that 4.5 actually passed
yeah,
the Turing test, which is basically the measure of a machine's ability to,
right,
appear human and, run a task at the same
right.
level of expertise as a human. So why do you think like that AI can also simulate like human emotion? I mean, we know that AI can do that because, like I mentioned, I think I did not mention this yet, but sentimental analysis, right? Like given a client meeting
Yes,
transcript, you can analyze a transcript and figure out what the sentimental analysis score is or what
right.
the trends are in a transcript, right? But again, it's only like assessing it just based off, yeah, just analyzing data, right? It's just looking at numbers and tokens and just
Right.
coming up to an output. It can't feel anything, of course, we know that. So why do you think that AI agents can simulate human emotion, and why is that even valuable if they can?
Yeah, I think that you're going to see that in a couple of ways. I think they are going to get better at being able to pass, do things like pass the Turing test. So they are going to be, I think, directly, they're going to be better. And I've seen this in ChatGPT more. I mean, some people
Right.
say it's gone too far the other way, but ChatGPT is like so understanding and so empathetic and so encouraging. And I think that's going to mean a lot to a lot of people. So I think that that's going to continue. I think big question is a sort of related question about how AI is going to affect financial services. For me, there's sort of two questions. One is this issue about is it different? Is this time different? And the other question is, how much human interaction do people, real human interaction, do people require when they're doing financial management? This is, if you go and look at, for example, that Microsoft study that came out
Yeah.
a couple months ago that tried to estimate the sort of the vulnerability of different occupations to AI, and financial services, financial advisors were pretty high up on that scale.
Right.
They were in the, I don't know, top, I don't know if they're quite in the top quartile, but they were more likely than not, many of them were about to be replaced, and the response from virtually every financial professional I heard is, yeah, but human connection is essential, and AI can't replicate that, so we're going to be okay.
Right.
So that's what I call the what me worry
Yeah.
response
So,
to this, is that as
right.
long as it can, they need, clients need that strong human connection, and that's going to enable these advisors to continue to stay on their jobs. And the real question is that true?
So you're
To what
saying your
extent is
argument
that
is
true?
that, well, AI is getting better and better. ChatGPT is getting more emotive in the sense, and I think that's
Yeah,
because of memory, right? It has baked in memory, so it
it does.
remembers past conversations and it's able to
Yeah,
understand how to respond to you, right? I'm going to steel man this a little bit, right?
yeah,
And here's what I'm going to say is a client's financial life has so many different components to it, right? You've
yes,
got the behavioral piece, which is huge, right? You've got the investment management piece, you've got the financial planning piece, the tax piece, the estate planning piece, the
yeah,
wealth transfer piece. You've got all these different moving pieces. Even if an AI can parse through all these different data sources, right, and come through like some sort of unique insight, right, or whatever, there's still a human's unique ability to look across the data, look across the client's financial position, also understand who the client is based on past interactions, based on their core values, and then come up with unique advice that an AI could just never do. Because the AI technically can parse through all these, data structures and
mm,
come up with some sort of response. And also when it comes to like simulating, because that's what it is. It's just really a massive simulation of human empathy. Because under the hood, just ones and zeros in a really
yeah.
awesome statistical model that's predicting the next best token, right? Um, Considering that, what are your thoughts on what I just said? Because I'd love to
Yeah.
know your response to that.
No, I agree with a lot of that. I think, to the extent, that when I think about the future of financial advice, and I know we're going to talk a little more about that, but I think that the ability to, solve this complexity and manage this complexity, I think the firms that are good at that are going to be the ones
Got it.
that are the ones that survive. And I think that's kind of the direction that they're headed, these sort of almost more concierge like,
Hmm.
okay, well, maybe we don't have an estate attorney on staff, but we have a relationship with a estate planning firm, and I'll get you in touch with their lawyer tomorrow. Or maybe
Or
we're
you
not
have
a
an
trust
estate planning,
company.
sorry, or you have an estate planning agent that's able to bring you insights into your portal.
That can do some of that stuff. And when it gets really complicated, it goes over to the trust company that this wealth management firm has a connection to. The analogy I use sometimes is these sort of higher end travel agencies. So if you look back at the internet, what was one of the you know, first group of occupations to get wiped out were travel agents, right? I mean, as soon as the internet came out, I'm sure, well, you're a little young, but I was like, this is great. I'm going to make my own reservations now. I'm going to go on and I can pick my flight. I can pick my seat. I don't have to pay anybody to do it, and I can do it in a few minutes. So the companies that were just doing that, they're not around anymore. But the
Hmm.
companies that are around and doing really well are the companies that specialize in, 2 week long family African safaris, where they're doing the plane reservations, the hotel reservations, they're lining up the tour guides. Um, they're telling you what hiking trails to take. They're making hotel reservations for you, or restaurant reservations for you. So they're doing this very comprehensive, complex sort of logistics for these families. And I think that that may be part of the future of financial advice, where these companies will be able to manage all that complexity, and people will be willing to pay. And I do think people will be willing to pay
Mm.
for someone to manage those logistics, because at some point it just becomes overwhelming. I think
That's super, right.
if you're just like looking to make sure that your portfolio is balanced properly, you won't need a financial professional. Most people won't. They'll do it themselves.
That's super interesting. So what I'm hearing from you is that if you're a generic firm without a clear niche and without a clear value proposition to serve a very specific ICP or an ideal client persona, you're probably going to miss out on new clients
Yeah, I mean
because the clients, right,
there may be some firms that can do that broad, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see more, niches like, the firms that work with, entrepreneurs, firms that work with business executive
right.
firm. You already see firms that specialize in working with women, older women, divorced women,
Yeah.
you know. And to me, getting back to this question about how will these firms look like medical practices, right now you have like cardiology practices and you have oncology practices. Um, so I think you might see more something, you might see these more niches. And
Right.
but if you don't, where you don't see the niches, I think you're still going to see very holistic concierge like planning where, okay, if we don't have that resource immediately available, we'll find it for you very quickly. Um, and I think that the firms that help their clients manage that complexity are going to be some of the ones that are most likely to survive.
Well, Michael Kitces has also been harping down on this message of, firms having to niche down to like get clear on their marketing message too. And
Yes.
and it has a direct correlation to your net new client assets, like a Schwab's benchmarking study, RIA benchmarking study came out a few months ago and found that like firms that have a documented ideal client persona generated 67% more net new
Yeah.
client assets. I think just if you just look at human psychology, like you're just more naturally inclined to people that
Yeah.
specialize in needs that you uniquely have that another
Of
generic
course.
firm does not have. So
Yeah.
even though ChatGPT may become an AI financial advisor, assuming, it's still going to be generic. It's not going to have specialized skills for you, assuming you're a teacher and you have unique needs as a teacher. Maybe there's a firm that specializes in serving teachers
Yeah.
that right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I think it's going to push it. I definitely think it's going to push the profession in that direction. And then AI is going to enable those people to go really deep, right? They're going to be able to collect
Mm,
this really strong expertise, and they're going to be able to have those emotional and psychological conversations with their clients. And because again, the sort of the technical back office and investment management stuff is going to be taken over by algorithms. So I think that that's, when I try to look into my crystal ball, that's a lot of what I see.
So that comes to the next question, which is like this idea of the full stack RIA, right? So specialized firm serving a specialized
Yeah.
niche, but has like full stack capabilities because of AI agents, right?
Hmm.
So how do you see that playing out? Maybe a firm that may not have like native tax planning capability, but now does because of a
Yeah.
tax agent that can uniquely do things for that
Yeah.
client, right? Is
No, I
that,
think that
yeah,
I think that's related, and I think these agents are going to get smarter. So again, they're going to
right,
get there's going to be more of a proactive component, and they're going to be able to train them. And to the extent that they do serve this niche market, they'll be able to create a training
right.
database that's narrow but very, very, very
Wow.
deep. And it'll just keep getting deeper and deeper. So the agents are going to get smarter, and they're going to be able to say, oh, Jonathan looks just like this other guy. This thing happened to this other guy, and Jonathan looks a lot like that guy. So,
Mhm.
maybe the advisor didn't think of this, but the agent said, "Hey, we might want to talk to this.
Right.
Maybe not, but something worked for this other guy, and so let's talk to Jonathan about that." So it'll come up and it'll basically say, "Next time you talk to Jonathan, here are the three questions you should ask, and depending how he answers those questions, here's the analysis, or even better, record it and come back to me, and I'll help you figure out what to do in the next step."
Right, because the agent can see patterns across the CRM or the client database in a way that
Yeah,
the human advisor just won't have the time to, right? Is
it'll
that,
be it'll
yeah.
be hard. It'll be hard. So
But
and sure, the advisor might spot things before the agent, but I wouldn't if I were advisor, I would want to have that agent to make sure I'm not missing anything.
Right. Can you give an example of the proactive piece that you mentioned about? Like, what do you mean when you say an agent that's proactive? Because right now, uh, AI is pretty static. Like you throw input, you throw a
Right,
prompt in, you get an output.
right.
That's cool. It does some reasoning stuff. It can think
Yeah,
the chain of thought, whatever. Like that's cool. And it's quite a big deal. It's pretty nice. But
yeah.
what do you mean by proactive?
Well, it gets a little bit back to what we were talking about before. So you don't know what you don't know. And so I think, you don't people like I'm learning, to really use ChatGPT well, you need to know what to ask it, right?
Right.
It's kind of classic garbage in, garbage out. So, part of I think my success with ChatGPT is I'm gradually learning, what to ask, how to ask, what type of follow-up questions. But if you've noticed, more recently, ChatGPT, you ask almost every conversation I have now with ChatGPT, it says, here's an answer. And then it says, hey, do you also want this?
Hmm.
And
Follow that.
sometimes I've
Right.
thought of this, but sometimes I haven't. And a lot of
Hmm.
times I just type, sure. It'll say, do you want this? And sometimes I don't really want it, but I'm curious to see what the output is. So being able to sort of these agents are going to be able to identify and anticipate potential issues more quickly. And it's challenging because again, in my chatbots now, I'm trying to give them a little bit more autonomy, give them more agency to go and figure out stuff on their own and make recommendations on their own. So that's what I mean. It's the ability to, with little or no human intervention for these bots to be able to potentially recognize issues, plan for certain issues, and again, proactively go out and solve problems sometimes before they even arise.
Right. I think that's a key piece, recognizing the issues, just being able to find those patterns, right? And bringing those insights to
Yeah.
the advisor, right? Um,
Hmm.
and so the advisor can choose to decide like how to use it. Like it's just
Sure.
actionable insights,
Yeah,
right?
and every day the advisor may get, or it
Right.
might not be every day, but every once in a while the advisor is going to get a notice saying, "Hey, Jonathan's birthday's coming up," or "I just noticed this transaction that Jonathan made. You sure you don't want to do this?" And the advisor may say, "No, we didn't need to do that," but the advisor may say, "Oh, that's a good idea.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
should talk to Jonathan about that, or let me go take a look at his account because he's been making a bunch of withdrawals, and I didn't really know that." And then the agent may go, well, here are 6 reasons why you might be doing that. And so
Right.
the advisor can come back and say, and might say, oh, Jonathan's getting married. He's just taking out money to pay for the honeymoon or to pay for the caterer. Oh, I should talk to him about that and wish him best or whatever. Obviously
Right.
I'm making that part up, but
Sure.
it's gonna. I mean, this is what obviously computers are good at. I mean, humans are good at pattern matching, but computers are 100 times faster and 100 times better at recognizing these patterns. And also, humans are tend to see patterns almost where they're not there, right? We're not really good statisticians by nature. So
Right.
we can train the models to be better statisticians and just to be able to assess probabilities in a much more accurate way than humans are able to do now.
Right. Did you hear that? I'm not sure if you know about this yet, but this just happened over the weekend on Friday. But OpenAI acquired a company called Roy, which is a personal finance app. It's like this tiny
Oh, I
little
didn't see
company
that.
of four. Did you hear about that?
No, I didn't, but it's interesting. And I want to
Why
look
would
at
they
that
acquire a
because
personal finance app? Right.
I'm not, it's funny because uh, well, I'll say a person I know very closely, was has a finance background and was interviewed by OpenAI. So
Interesting.
I have to think, I know they're getting involved in medicine, and he told me some other things they were getting involved with, but I have to think they want this. This market's too big. The financial management market's too big, and in my view, there are just too many unmet needs. When you look at these surveys again of what clients want and what they're getting, the gap is
Right.
big. I wrote about this 2 or 3 years ago, where I said something's going to happen. Some other player is going to come in to
Because
this
I
space.
right. Because when I think about like just ChatGPT and OpenAI's vision, like they want to become the personal AI, right? For the
Mhm.
average user. So they want to integrate all aspects of your life into ChatGPT. That is their vision.
Yeah.
They want to be
Yeah.
this perfect AI companion. And so when I
Yeah.
heard about the acquisition, I read about the company, but it's a non-custodial app, so it can't take actions on your behalf. You can't like
Right.
shift money between accounts and stuff. But you can track your portfolio, you can track your net worth, you can trade stocks and ETFs and whatnot, and you can get actionable insights, quote unquote, right? So they acquired that
I
company. I mean, that tells a story, right? That definitely communicates something about where how these AI companies are thinking about integrating this piece um, to their
Yeah, and they're not going to
model.
be the only ones. Again,
Right.
because I mean, there's trillions of dollars under, assets under management in in this
Correct.
country. So they're not going to be the only ones. And again, I think, the way I look at it is that for decades, if not centuries, these wealth management professionals have been reaping almost like monopolistic rents, in my opinion. Basically, they've been good at saying, Jonathan, this stuff's too complicated. You can't figure it out. You got to let me
Right.
figure it out. And
Yeah.
there's a little bit of market capture within the government where they say, they're usually fine with all this. In part, they're fine with some of this compliance stuff
Right.
that makes some of these processes more opaque because that just reinforces this notion that they're the only ones who can do this.
Right.
And I think what AI is going to show, and this gets back to what I call the boiling frog a little bit issue, is that you're the things like this are just going to gradually eat away, and then at some point, a lot of financial advisors are going to wake up and say, "Oh, geez, I just lost two clients because they said they don't need me anymore." Because everything's being done, everything that they need, especially those accounts that are not as complex, everything that they need, they can just do in ChatGPT.
Right. And this is where like verticalization and specialization becomes really important in finance, right?
Yeah,
And management. This is where I think the RIA space in general is really going to win big time, is that
I think so
we
too.
learn how to
I
apply
think so too. I think,
domain
some of the,
expertise, right?
they have to, and I think to some extent, like, what I like to say, content is making a comeback.
Yeah.
And you know, it comes a little bit from also just my personal perspective in terms of the models and the tools that I'm building. I have over the years assembled a lot of really good content. So when you use my tools and ask, my tools questions, they're not going out and looking in the internet, right? They're not
Yeah, can you
asking,
tell us a little
you
bit more
know,
about Wellchat and like how
yeah.
that fits in with what I just spoke about?
Yeah, so what I've done is created a very curated knowledge base. It's mostly around financial planning, retirement planning, estate planning, and then also there's a big piece around having better conversations. So the chatbots that I've developed, I've sort of got two sets of sort of client-facing and advisor-facing. And the advisor-facing bots are mostly focused on helping advisors have these conversations because again, I think the advisors that don't have these emotionally laden conversations and these sort of sensitive conversations with a client, in the future, if you can't have those conversations, you're not going to be in business, especially with older clients. So what I've tried to do, I've done a lot of great work I work with some just top-notch psychiatrists. Literally, the head of geriatric psychiatry at Mass General Hospital has contributed content. Ned Hallowell's one of the top psychiatrists around attention and ADD, and I've sort of tried to take their brains as much as possible and put them in my software. As long as I also work with other healthcare professionals, financial planners, and the work that I've done, and I put that all in the knowledge base. So what I think you're going to see is more and more of these, specialized, highly curated, highly trained knowledge bases, because I think a lot of clients are going to say, well, where's this coming from? Where does this recommendation come from?
Yeah.
A lot of people are going to say, and ChatGPT is trying to answer that question now, and I think they're going to get better. They could say, well, we go to Wikipedia or whatever to get our answers. But I can say, I can like list, I can show you the articles that I'm using. I can tell you the people that I'm working with. even down to where with I can show you the knowledge base. I could literally show, and I'm going to start doing this, when my clients, most of financial services firms, if they ask, how do I know that the answers that my clients are getting or my advisors are getting are, accurate? And I say, well, here's the knowledge base. Here it
Right.
is. Every word that they're getting is taken from here. It's curated. It's not based on internet searches. And some of my content has won awards. So I think content's coming back, and I think that that's going to be increasingly important because that gets at a lot of issues like trust issues, for example. Um, People are worried about being, the sort of accuracy and the validity of, these recommendations. They're going to know that they're getting them from a trustworthy source.
Right. So how do you ensure that your applications like stays up to date and like is constantly pulling the latest research and it's always
Yeah,
fine-tuned
that's certainly, yeah, that's a
in a way
challenge for
that
sure.
the models cannot catch up because these models are also getting exponentially better, like we
Right.
discussed, and new training
Yeah.
data, better scaffolding, better
Right.
reasoning models.
Right.
How do you try to get better in terms of like the data set?
Well, I can get certainly I get better with the sort of the computational side. Like my back end is ChatGPT, so as ChatGPT gets
Yeah,
better and faster
sure.
and more articulate, I benefit. I just get that. I kind of get that for free.
Yeah,
But yeah, keep updating the database. That's a lot of what I do now. That's the challenge of
right.
staying
So
on
I'm
top of the
assuming,
research.
right, that you're using some sort of retrieval augmented generation to retrieve
Yeah,
just based
yeah,
off keywords, semantic search, pulling
yeah,
information,
yeah,
and then feeding
yeah.
it to them with citations. I'm assuming you provide
I have
citations.
some citations. What I do,
Yeah,
I have sort of two pieces. I have recommendations, and again, these
got it.
recommendations are ones that I've
Yeah,
been working on and then I have coaching tips. So I have this sort of detailed, say, Jonathan, you should do X, Y, and Z, and then I have coaching
yeah,
tips to say, Jonathan, I know X, Y, and Z is hard. Don't worry if X takes you a long time. Just do X.
yeah.
Don't try to do X, Y, and Z all at once. Start with X, then get to Y. So I've also got these sort of higher level tips that they're designed, and those are designed to show empathy and understanding. So I have in my approach, I have those kind of two pieces. But yeah, in general, staying on top and also just identifying. I mean, I'm in a space that's a little bit broader, so there's a
Sure.
lot of different pieces. So I got to make sure that, I can help some people with estate planning and helps these other people with caregiving and help these other people plan for cognitive decline. It's a little bit bigger space. So in that sense, it's a little more challenging. But
Interesting.
that's a big part of what I do because the technical stuff, the programming, sure. Um, but again, those programming tools are getting better, like Replit and Render and Weaviate. I mean, I'm kind of in that camp now that the new programming language is English.
Yeah. And
And I've
even,
been doing that. I've been saying,
right.
just, help me build this and just put it out in words. And then I get the code and off you go. But if that code is not pulling in good data, then it's kind of useless.
Right. And even to like make these models better, you need really good data and you have a good knowledge base. Um, but then that data also has to be like really unique. Like data is a moat, like it's a unique
Yeah,
advantage for any
right.
business, like we know. But also it's how unique your data is. Like, because now you can create synthetic data inside of large language model.
Yeah, and I've been doing that a little bit.
Okay.
The other thing that I've done is this gets back a little bit of like knowing what questions to ask. I do have some assessments. They're kind of like needs assessments that take people through the process. Like, okay, I don't get this whole estate planning stuff.
Right.
I don't get this whole caregiving stuff. I don't get this, or so I don't even know where to start. Like a legacy planning, yeah. What do I do? So I have these assessments that have these series of questions. Again, I'm being proactive and saying, hey, Jonathan, I know you don't get this. I'm going to help you help you know what you don't know now. So I have that. I also have I have some calculators. I have some cognitive assessments. So I have one in particular that's based on a clinical study that I helped
Right.
manage and design at Mass General Hospital. So that's a very unique assessment. So part of my value proposition when I think about it, and when people say, "Hey, why can't I just use ChatGPT?"
Right.
Right? And so my response is, it's kind of usually twofold. It's like, well, my knowledge base is very curated. I could, it's not going on and doing internet searches.
Mhm.
There's going to be virtually no hallucinating in the responses that you get from me. And then I have these additional tools. These are
Wow, you
two
have
tools
no
that are
hallucination.
clinically based tools. So yeah, I mean it's hard to hallucinate, even with a somewhat broad knowledge base. It's pretty hard to mess that up. I mean, I pound it daily, asking questions, and now I'm setting up some pilot sites and I'm sure I'll get feedback from them. But that's sort of where I am now because that's part of the process is to find the gaps in the knowledge base, find any gaps in the knowledge base, which I'm
Right.
sure there will be, and then strive to fill those in.
So you have a knowledge base for your business and for what you do for firms and for advisors. But I'm thinking of like fast forward a little bit into the future, and do you think we might see an LLM that's trained to think like a CFP? It's fine-tuned. Either it's fine-tuned to think like a CFP, or it's trained, like the base model is trained with CFP data sets, like,
Sure.
you know,
Um, I think so. I mean, I think, you're looking at, you know, there are now experiments where ChatGPT tries to take, I don't know, like the LSATs or
right.
some of these other, and especially to the extent where there's just sort of rote memorization, ChatGPT is going to be unbeatable. Um, So or even medical exams where you're supposed to remember all these drugs and all these doses and the generic names and the brand names. Um, so that's something that ChatGPT is going to be better than any human at. So,
Right.
so basically the answer I think is yes. I think that they're going, you could just fill ChatGPT with all the government regulations around, all the FINRA stuff, all the CFP stuff. You just throw
Right.
that in there. I mean, it's funny when people say, "Oh, ChatGPT soon they're going to be smarter than humans." It's already way smarter. Depends
Yeah.
what you mean by smarter. It's
Yeah.
already way smarter than any human who's ever lived in terms of the ability to recall information. ChatGPT is a million times smarter than me or you.
Right.
Like if you want to know what happened in Mongolia in 1278, you probably don't know, but ChatGPT does,
That's true.
right?
Uh-huh. Talking about rote memorization and about a smarter AI and ChatGPT, I want to touch a little bit on the GPQA Diamond benchmark, which we discussed about briefly
Mm-hmm.
before the call. But the GPQA Diamond, which is a graduate level Google-approved Q&A, is a benchmark designed to test whether LLMs can solve hard graduate level multiple choice questions in science, biology, physics, chemistry, and where the answers just simply cannot be found online, kind of tying back to your piece on the
Yeah.
knowledge base, right? They require reasoning and subject mastery. And diamond tier questions are hand selected and validated by subject matter experts, like PhDs, to be the toughest, least Googleable, and most
Mm-hmm.
reasoning intensive. Um, so all these models, like right from Gemini 2.5 even to the latest Sonnet 4.5, all have percentage scores in the lower to higher 80s when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to this specific score. And that's monumental orders of
Yeah.
magnitude of improvement from GPT-4, from where we were 2 years ago, even to where we are
Yes.
right now. So I want to ask a question that's a little different from what I originally sent you. But
Mm-hmm.
what does it mean for firms, for advisors, when they come in contact with clients who have access to such incredible intelligence, like at the palm of their hands, right?
Yeah.
What do you make of that? Because you can imagine going into advice conversations today and clients are like fully equipped. Like we know exactly what questions to ask. So the advisor
Right.
is not using AI in that context. Like that, they're basically toast.
They're basically toast. No, I agree, and I think that's a little bit there's the couple things that we talked about. I think the people who there's going to be two types of clients, and these clients may possess both characteristics. The clients that they just want someone there to kind of hold their hand.
Right.
They can add, they know what questions to ask, they're getting answers, they pretty much trust the answer, but they still want to say, Jonathan, what do you is this okay? You know, I still want to get your stamp of approval. And I think that that could very well persist for a long time. And then the other client that's likely to stick around is the person who's, well, like we talked about, who's got really complex stuff. They're probably more likely to be the high net worth or ultra high net worth, but they've got three different kinds of trusts, and they've got,
Right.
divorced family members, and they've got, real estate in Costa Rica, and they've got all these moving pieces, and they've got two other homes in the US, and they've got crypto assets, and those I think those clients are still it's still going to be hard for them to just
Sure.
go and ChatGPT. I mean, ChatGPT is going to give them, say, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this, and they're still going to say, I can't do all that.
Oh yeah,
I
well,
need
forget
help.
about. I mean, the high net worth, ultra high net worth, like once you cross 2, 3, 4 million, even up to 1 million, I
Yeah,
think there's no way they're going to talk to a chatbot. Like those
yeah,
clients don't care about your chatbot. They don't care how good your AI is or how great your
right,
software is. They want someone professional to manage all of that wealth. And I
yeah,
think that's also
and
an
they're willing to
opportunity
pay
for
for it.
right. And that's sort of like a really nice tailwind in the next 10 years when you see
Yeah,
the great wealth transfer,
yeah.
all that's coming
So
with
those
that.
those firms, I think, are going to make it. And again, I think those firms are going to be they're going to have people on their staffs, and I'm already starting to see
Right.
this. They're going to say, "Oh, oh, I'm sorry, your husband just died. We have a grief counselor here. Do you want to talk to that person?" Or,
Right.
you just got divorced. I'll connect you with a marriage counselor, and she can help you. He or she can help you think about, that what you need to do to overcome. And so I think that's going to be part
Right.
of that delivery, that holistic delivery process of, complexity. Or they just may have a therapist saying, look, I can understand things are crazy. You got all these moving pieces.
Right.
Just, it's okay. We'll take care of it. Here's what you do. You think about things you can do yourself. Don't worry about things beyond your control. Getting that sort of behavioral coaching. I just think about, if I were going to start a firm tomorrow, one of my first hires would be someone like that, some sort of financial therapist, who could talk to my clients, because a lot of therapists can, but I think there can be some stigma around that. And what if you're a financial professional, so I'm with my financial advisor, he just said, talk to this person. And you may not feel like, oh, something's wrong with me. It's like, oh, this guy recommended, he just wanted to check in to see how I feel about money. And I think that transition could potentially be very smooth. It's just another appointment. So I talked to my advisor today about the portfolio, and I talked to someone, else in his office about my estate plan, and now I'm going to talk to this person about sort of managing my emotions around money. Sure.
That's a good case for that. So, um, I want to touch a little bit on the intelligence piece, and we'll try to wrap this up really
Hmm.
soon. But I guess it's one thing to have the intelligence, like to have, these incredible models in the palm of your hand, but it's a whole different ball game to like know when and how to apply the intelligence, right? That's where the
Yeah.
wisdom of the advisor kicks in. And advisors who've served clients over several years know when and how to apply the intelligence. Because a client may come to them and say, "Oh, well, my ChatGPT reasoning model gave me this response. Why do you think, or why do you see
Right.
otherwise?" Right? So it's like,
Right.
yes, advisors need to be using AI to be better equipped, but also they are uniquely qualified already in the sense that they have these years of wisdom of serving all these clients, right? So how do you layer in this
Sure.
wisdom piece here?
No, I think especially in the shorter term, I think it matters a lot. And we've
Sure.
touched on this a little bit, because they kind of know, they know they can understand what the client doesn't know. They know what questions to ask. They can say, hey, look, Jonathan, I went through the similar process with another client that looks a lot like Jonathan, and here's what we did. So I think, especially in the short term, that's going to be very important. And I think
Right.
that that's what I think. And I think the advisors who develop these skills, whether it's just good at prompt engineering, or they pulled in this technology that has some agents in them. I think those advisors are going to do really well, because it's, again, that's sort of the co-pilot scenario. And I think the Copilot scenario is going to be around for a while. I mean, in some sense, it'll be around forever. But then the question is again, how much better are these agents going to get?
Hmm.
And if these advice firms are able to capture that data and put it in their model, and have the agents be able to sit through that data every day and recognize patterns, um, then it's hard to imagine these models aren't going to get better at that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's part of the future.
Right. I have several questions to follow up with, but I'll save it for another time. But we'll
Sure.
close off with this last question. But we're in the year 2030. Let's just imagine that this is, 2030, and there's a 90% probability that we've reached AGI. I'd love to hear what your definition is of AGI if you do have one.
Yeah.
And what does the financial services and wealth management world look like in a super intelligent world where AI agents, I think we covered some of this, but where AI agents
Yeah.
do 80 to 90% of what of the technical aspects of an advisory firm.
Right. Well, as someone once said, it's hard to make predictions, especially about the future.
Yeah.
um, and also, I think that another person once told me that when it comes to adopting technology, most wealth management firms want to come in second, right? They don't want to be the
Yeah.
guinea pig. So I think to the extent that we
Mm,
see AGI in the financial services, it may be a little slower than where you might see it in, engineering, or especially, I mean, everybody thinks that like the
yeah.
number one top area where we're going to see AI impacts is in medicine, medical research. I
Mm,
mean, that's pretty much the standard answer, and I think that's true. So I think you're going to see it. My guess would you're going to see it later. You're going to see the effects of it later, but it's hard to imagine it's not going to hit the financial services. It may not hit it by 2030, but I still think in the long run you're going to have fewer advisors, but more productive advisors. And again, even if we do have something approaching artificial general intelligence, then it kind of comes back a little bit to, okay, it can be the best robot in the world, but especially high net worth people are still going to want to talk to they're still going to want a human to be able
right.
to say everything's okay. I mean, the most fundamental thing about being human is to have these relationships and connections.
Right.
And for, there's been a lot of research, and that's what makes people happy. That's what helps people live longer. That's fundamental to our core being. So,
Right.
I don't think that's ever going to go away. I think that, the $64,000 question is how much are these agents going to be able to substitute that really core human emotion and feeling around these relationships and connections?
And I think the bull case is also that, AI is going to create a lot of prosperity too. If AI
Oh, it
does what
already
it's supposed to,
has.
right, if AI does what it's
Yeah.
supposed to do and improves US productivity by even 1 or 2 basis points, I mean, that is huge, right? That in itself is going to
Oh,
create
it's
so much
one,
more.
one, one
Yeah.
percent compounded, as you know. And there was, I mean, I'm sure you saw what the most recent GDP statistics is the biggest. Basically the reason why we had growth in GDP, what or no, that was the second quarter now, was because of spending on AI. Like the delta
Hmm.
spending on AI, just on AI, was bigger than the delta in all consumer spending. So the investments in AI basically were the reason that the economy grew, which to me just blew me away when you think about, we're
Right.
living in a country with, I don't 300, how many millions of people live in the hundreds of millions of people. I think most people don't understand how huge the US economy is.
Right. Oh, how
I mean,
deep
they
it is.
think
How
how
deep it,
deep and just
yeah.
how hard it is to make, big changes, and how hard it is to get, have these major impacts, and to see that AI spending account for that, basically almost all the delta in the growth in GDP. That just tells you, how much. I mean, it's got to be bigger than the telecommunications spending that was happening in the 90s. Because of that, I mean, this is just, it's already approaching dominating the economy. And I just saw today that OpenAI and AMD just
Right.
made an agreement. I just saw that this morning. My brother used to work at AMD, so I was kind of interested.
That's
But
cool.
and they've got an agreement now. They have an agreement with NVIDIA and AMD.
Do you own
Um,
any stock? Because the stock did jump 25% this morning.
I was thinking I'm betting my brother does. So I want to get in touch with
Yeah,
my brother. He must still have some AMD stock. So it went up 25%. I was wondering. I didn't have time. I was gonna check it, but
up 25%.
I'm guessing it must have gone way up. It must
Probably
have
higher
gone way
now.
up. So I have
Yeah,
some stock somewhere, but I'm sure my brother has a lot more.
that's awesome.
But yeah, I think we're going to see more of those. Then from the other thing that there is a bubble. There's a bubble in there somewhere. Something, it's inevitable. People say, is AI a bubble? Of course, it's a bubble. Um, is things going to go up and come back down? Sure. But I don't think it's a bubble in the long term.
Right.
This is here to stay. This is here to stay. Sure, there's going to be overshoot. There's going to be overexpense in certain areas, and people are going to be too late, maybe do too early, maybe focused on the wrong technology, but it's not going away.
Yeah, I think there are very few firms that like there are few companies that are going to win, and I think companies that have the right data infrastructure for agentic workflows are going to win. I think in the wealth tech space, there's not a whole lot of companies doing that right now or have really
No,
strong data infrastructure for agentic workflows, right? I think Tiffin is one of those companies. I think they've just signed on with Palantir to
yeah,
build out a data
I
infrastructure for their agentic workflows, which is kind of cool.
I think that's smart. I think those agents you're going to see more and more. And I've written about this too. You're going to see more and more of those agents
Right.
in financial services.
All right. Well, Chris, thank you for your time. This was a lot of fun. And
Thanks, Jonathan.
thank you for coming on
Was
AI
fine.
for Wealth. Thanks.
Thank you.